What a game, Cavs fans. Appreciate you stopping on by. It's Spencer German and Spencer Davies with you. Spin is on scene from Rocket Arena, where it all went down on Sunday afternoon. I'm just at home, but certainly a lot to talk about from this game and a win over the Trailblazers. And that's the important thing, is they came out on top. Never a doubt, right, Spence? But we appreciate you guys jumping on in for the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI, following along with all things Cleveland Cavaliers. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And of course, check out any of our written content over at si.com/NBA/Cavaliers. But Spence, kind of an unexpected, if you will, thriller at Rocket Arena today. Blazers giving the Cavs everything they had. They led, I think, by like 18 points at one point late in the third quarter. But these Cavaliers, man, they always seem to find a way. They pull off the comeback, and we'll get into some specifics on guys who made an impact today. But this is one of the first times, I think, where after like a big game, it felt like they almost gave you like a letdown game. Like it was almost like a hangover almost. We haven't seen that a lot from this team, but it certainly felt like early on there was some just like lag going on with the Cavs, and they weren't quite into it.
It reminded me a little bit of the Raptors game earlier this year at home. I forget who they'd beaten before, but it was a big game. Maybe it was the Thunder. I'm trying to think back into my head, but the effort that they gave against the Raptors that night, again, a scrappy, young, long, big team that really could give you some problems defensively. And Kenny Atkinson gave a ton of credit to Portland just from the jump, how much that they were doubling their energy, but also just the way that they were pressuring the ball, and that the Cavs weren't setting screens to get each other open. They weren't making open shots, and they were always kind of dribbling it around. He actually, went out and said that Darius, kind of was dribbling around and taking some ill-advised shots early on. So, he was just kind of a little disappointed in the energy that they had from the jump. Second half, they got more to it. How many times have we seen that before? They haven't been down too many times this year, but when they do, they always respond and they figure out a way. We know that this is obviously not a team of the Celtics caliber, and they're not the playoff type of team that the Cavs have to do this against. But, I mean, you come out and do what you did in the fourth quarter. And it really started towards the tail end of the third quarter, where it seemed like Portland just kept answering them. They got it down to 11. Portland got it back up to 17. They got it down to 9. Portland got it back up to 15. But the Cavs just kept on coming back and really, sticking to their game plan. Some big shots, and I'm sure that we'll get into the individual performances. But, yeah, I mean, Portland pressured the hell out of the ball. You got to give a lot of credit to Toumani Camara, one of my irrational love players on a team like the Blazers, who's a developing squad, but has plenty of size, plenty of length, and does have some very exciting players like Shaedon Sharpe. We saw just had the dunk of the year a couple of games ago. He had a nice putback tonight. He has a ton of potential. Anthony Simons, we know, can drop 40 on your head anytime. And then obviously Scoot Henderson had a good game off the bench for them too. So they are a scrappy young team. And I'm not even mentioning Denny Avdia, who really gave them problems on both ends of the floor and looked the part tonight of one of the better forwards in the league. So not an easy game by any means.
Yeah, Avdia had 30 points tonight. He was kind of the star of the show for them, but obviously you mentioned a number of guys who obviously contributed. That was the case for the Cavs as well, which we'll get into here in a second. And Meg's reminding us, Spence, that the game you're speaking of where they kind of had a letdown against the Raptors was after they beat the Thunder back in January. So, yeah, that was to your point, a very similar sort of feeling, but we haven't felt that a lot this year. Another aspect of this game was the fact that Donovan Mitchell didn't play. And, without him, this team's usually been fine. But like you said, took their foot off the gas a little bit to start things off, and then had to pick up the pace. And what stood out to me, Spence, was just like it was the role players who stepped up in this one. That's not to say like the star guys didn't obviously make an impact. You brought it up, but like Darius Garland still had 13 and dished out 7 assists. Like he was having an impact on the game. And like Mobley had 20 and nearly a double-double with 8 rebounds. So those guys are still impacting the game in meaningful ways. And obviously Mobley also fouled out, so he missed like the overtime and all that. But it was the role players who stole the show today. Ty Jerome was incredible as he was second on the team in points with 25. He stepped up in a bunch. He was to me, Spence, like he was the one that got the comeback sort of started. He was making big plays on the defensive end, getting steals, turning it into points, knocking down a couple threes. I know even Sam Merrill had some points in this game where he was making some big shots. But then the real star at the end ends up being DeAndre Hunter, which we've all seen little bits and pieces and blips of what he can bring to the table what he's going to mean to this team in a playoff series, potentially against the Celtics and other teams. But man, like this was his coming out party for the Cavs, dropping 32 points and just again showing you why this trade was made in the first place, why he is going to be so important for this team come playoff time and helping them overcome the wing heavy teams that are like the Celtics, the Knicks, etc. Because man, was he phenomenal tonight. And it's wild to think like he's only played 7 games and he already feels like similar to the beginning of the season where I think we were all kind of shocked, man, how quickly this came together and they rattle off 15 straight wins. It's been kind of incredible how quickly he's picked things up and already fits in with this group.
It helps that there's not really set plays that the Cavs run. They are based off of principles. They are based off of tendencies. And so there's a level of freedom for DeAndre to be able to bring the ball up every once in a while, to be able to break your man up off the dribble. And then from there, when they start guarding you differently or when they start guarding you, differently, inside or whatever it may be, you can, flash out to the outside and then be ready for a catch shoot, which DeAndre Hunter was ready for really every single type of play tonight. He had the catch shoot threes that really got him back into the game. He tied the game and then he put him ahead in the fourth quarter. You also had him catching the ball and driving to the rack and drawing a ton of fouls. He got to the line 12 times. That was huge. So you just kind of saw it all on the offensive end, what he's capable of. And I think defensively, you have to look at how he's able to kind of match up with these guys and really use his length to his advantage, whether that's vertically or horizontally. He can get his hands in the passing lane, play the gaps, as Donovan Mitchell says, but also on contests, really making it tough on opponents. Like even if they have an open shot and he's a late close, they're seeing that hand up there and they're like, oh man, I don't know. I might have to rush this shot a little bit. So he just brings it kind of all to the table, to be quite honest. And that's nice to have in the back pocket as Donovan Mitchell's out for rest today and you bring someone out like to do that. You say coming out party for DeAndre Hunter. I don't think that he's had a bad game yet. I think that
he hasn't. I say that because he went out for 30, obviously.
30. This is his first 30-point game since January 27th with the Hawks. So he hasn't had too much of an opportunity to have that kind of usage. And especially on the Cavs, that's not going to be what his normal usage is. But to have that and to have that in your back pocket, knowing that that's what he's capable of, that's a big thing to have.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge. Again, this is why the trade was made, right? And I was reminded by Megs that was DeAndre Hunter's 8th game as a Cav. I was thinking going into the pregame, I was talking about his playing 7 games so far. So I just forgot today was number 8. But regardless, he's 8-0 as a Cavalier and doing some incredible things. And I thought what was also fun about today's game, Spence, as we talk about role players having an impact, it was him and Ty Jerome, the old college teammates who were really feeding off of each other and sparking this run and sparking this team to get over the top and get the win. And that made it even more fun because Ty Jerome's been one of the best stories, I think, in the NBA, obviously on this Cavs team. And to see both those guys just, put on an absolute show was a lot of fun today and be the ones who sort of get this team over the top when they're dealing with Mobley fouling out, no Donovan Mitchell, etc. I mean, it was just all around like a fun game. We can say that in a win, obviously, a little bit more than a loss, but it was cool to see those guys kind of reunite in this way and be the stars on a day where the Cavs really needed them to step up.
Yeah, it's just kind of like what they've been used to playing together. And Kenny came out and said it. He's like, I think that Ty Jerome had 19 potential assists tonight. He only had 6 on the stat sheet, but to set your teammates up that way, but to also have the aggressiveness, as we keep saying, to pull up from 20, 25 plus, to get inside and use the floater to your advantage, to draw defenders and to spray it out to your teammates for open looks, which the Cavs, by the way, were not making at all to start this game. They were ice cold and they just kind of did not have the energy out of the gate that they wanted them to have. And Kenny was quite blunt about that. Like, this was not a type of game that you expected them to have. He was sure of their maturity before this game, and joked that maybe he should have gave a speech beforehand because, they were coming up that big win in Boston, the comeback win on national television on the road. And then you come back and you play a 3:30 game against the Blazers team who has been playing better. Like, let's mind you and pay that because they did just beat Brooklyn by 20 the other night. They are a defensive team, as I said, pressure the heck out of you with Tumani Kamara really denying everything off ball, making sure that they're blowing up off ball screens and ensuring that there is no rhythm or flow to what your offense does. And kind of want to go into another point, if that's okay, Spence. This game, there were 70 combined free throws between two teams.
Yeah, I want to get into this. I want to get into this because of Mobley fouling out, and there was a lot of calls and a lot of questionable calls, I think, too.
This game went nearly 3 hours. And mind you, this was an overtime game. We can talk about that, too. But according to Ethan Sands at Cleveland.com, thanks to him for looking this up, that's the 7th most in NBA history combined between two teams, 70 free throws in one game. And it was a mess, man. There's not really any kind of rhythm you can establish. You kind of just have to fight through it. And as I said, almost 3 hours of a game. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but just listen to the post-game audio on our YouTube channel. You will hear the frustrations that were definitely expressed in the post-game, press conferences and what we were able to talk to them in the locker room. There were not a lot of happy people about that.
I was going to ask, can you provide maybe a little bit of an overview just of like what the general feeling was? Like, did Kenny allude to, I know Kenny's going to play it close to the vest. He doesn't want to get the fine, but did Kenny even allude to like, yeah, maybe there was some stuff that wasn't great tonight? Because I think at home fans obviously were frustrated, and in the arena with some of the calls tonight.
Yeah, no, he came out and basically tried to leave it at what it was, but it's just like it's so hard to get a rhythm when those are the type of thing. There's stoppages, there's reviews, there's all of these. He didn't come out and say ticky-tack fouls, but I'll say like there were some ticky-tack fouls called out there, and there were also some very pivotal calls that were wrong. Like he did, give himself a little bit of grief because he's the one that drew up the play that got Evan Mobley taken out of the game by foul out. Donovan Clingan, on the other hand, fouled out in 11 minutes, which was one thing the Cavs did all night really well, was to make sure they attacked the rookie and made sure that he was not going to be able to be a presence inside for them this evening. But it was just a really ugly game. Like I said, you go to our YouTube page, plenty was said about it. Ty Jerome might have been the most blunt you could possibly be about that. So definitely go and check that out. But yeah, the locker room, even, like they were not happy whatsoever with how this game was officiated. But, they fought through it. And I mean, I'm sure that the Blazers had to fight through some too, because it was just a very, very quicksandy type of environment out there. And that's not easy to play through. That really is not. So credit to the Cavs for finding a way to play through that too in the second half. And I'm sure we're going to get to a couple of other players.
Yeah, I think I wanted to go to Max Strus next because he kind of felt like the unsung
hero. That was exactly
what
I was thinking.
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength per usual. The Spencer Squared is on the same page. But listen, like he kind of felt like an unsung hero in this game, which is, I mean, I honestly, I think that's a good way to just describe Max Strus in general. He kind of flies under the radar a lot of the time, especially because he can be a streaky shooter. People kind of forget about him and they're like, this guy just not knocking down shots again. But then he makes those big plays on the defensive end, and he makes a big play assisting on a bucket. And you start to realize and see like he's always in the right place at the right time, it seems like, which is why Kenny Atkinson has left him in the starting lineup at this point, because he trusts him with that starting group. But again, another solid performance from him tonight as he pumps in 14 points, had the 9 boards, 3 assists. Again, it's right time is a good way to describe it. But again, in that when they were mounting that comeback, and I will admittedly tell you, like I missed the first quarter of this game. Got caught up, and I watched the second quarter, watched most of the third quarter, and then I was in the car with my son for like the end of the third quarter, and every single time on the radio they were describing what was happening, I feel like it was either one of Max Strus or Ty Jerome's name that was getting called. So the fact that those two were such a spark today, I think, again, is massive. But again, Max Strus, he's that type of guy. He kind of is just like the spark that does the dirty work, and when you need him, he'll make a play for you that can turn things around or get you going on track.
To steal a line from Mr. Cavalier Austin Carr, Johnny on the spot. That's who Max Strus is, man. That. He's just always there to save a ball from going out of bounds, or he's there to poke a rebound out, or like you said, setting up his teammates. How about that stretch where he came out, knocked down a 3, and then the next possession ends up going on a curl, throwing an alley-oop to, I think it was J.A., streaking down the dunker spot. Like, and the thing about Max, and I think you could say this for a lot of players, but for him in particular, you mentioned the streakiness. He is very much so a rhythm player with his jump shot. Like if you see one go down and he sees one goes down, it's going to be curtains for the other team because he is just kind of in that microwave mode. But elsewhere, he always plays the same. I never see a bad energy game from Max Strus. Maybe a bad technique game. Maybe something to where he's getting, beat off the dribble, or, defensively, maybe he's not having his best night. But the effort and the energy is always there. You can never say that he comes out there flat. That is not something that Max does. Nothing he's done in his career. You can pay attention to the shot making all you want. And yes, this is what happens when you got streaky shooter like that. But the fact that he went out there and took 15 shots should be something that Cavs fans like, because at half, I think he'd taken 3 total and he missed them all. To come out in the second half, take those shots, also be willing to get downhill, get your teammates involved, and also going out and grabbing 9 boards, right? That's the big stuff that you really have to contribute, because Max is not going to be the 4th or 5th option on the court as far as who they're going to. You have so much talent, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And he's not going to be the guy that you need to score the ball at will. He has a role to play. He understands that. And I think that's a good thing about this Cavs team, is that they understand what is needed from them. And that makes them so difficult to beat.
No doubt about it. Anybody else, Spence, you want to shout out before we wrap things up and look ahead to what the week presents for this Cavaliers team in terms of the schedule?
Well, Jared Allen, another ho-hum 12-10 night. He wasn't going to close the game out if Evan hadn't fallen out. He's been, a good soldier all year long about that. And it seems like they are starting to lean toward DeAndre Hunter closing at the 4 with Evan on the floor. So keep an eye on that, seeing how that continues, or if it doesn't.
That could be
continue.
matchup based a little bit too, for sure.
It could.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that would probably be the one. And then Dean Wade playing some minutes at the 5 too, just a little bit with Hunter. And I think one lineup they had him without Mobley or Allen on the floor. So, keep an eye on that. But big shout out to the Blazers though, man. Like, Toumani Camara is one of my favorite players, young and up and coming players. And I thought he had a hell of a game. But the Cavs, just too much firepower the way they went about it. They scored, believe this, 77 points in the second half after they had 42 after one half. So that's what they do.
And I do think another way to sort of sum this one up is, listen, when you're the best team in the East, best team in the NBA, just come off a win over the Celtics, you're going to get everybody's best shot. Like every team is vying and looking at you. As we talk about the Celtics being the barometer for most of the league, and the Cavs, like how do the Cavs do against that team every time they play? We're glued to the TV. That's how all the Cavs are for a lot of other teams. They're like, how do we do against this team? How do we play tough against this team? So, you got to give them credit, tip the cap. And I'm sure that'll be the case for some of the games coming up this week, because it's a tough schedule. You got a back-to-back Tuesday and a Wednesday on the road in Chicago, then back home and you play the Heat, who I always bring up the fact that the Heat seem to be a team that gives the Cavs some trouble at times. So we'll see what that looks like. But yeah, Spence, I will say this. I was glad they got the win today, because this felt like one they needed if they're going to break the win streak this season, which is the last thing I'm kind of hoping for before the season closes out. I want to see them break that record.
Oh, what's the record? You tell me.
66 wins is the record for wins in a season.
Okay.
That was Braun's first stint, I want to say 08, 09, like the year before he ended up playing last season, then leaving. So they obviously, there's like 22 games left to go now, 21 games left to go, I think. So they're on pace, but they can only lose 5 more games if they're going to break it. And I didn't want to see him lose one of the Blazers. So I'm happy about that. I'm sure other fans are as well.
And let's not forget, too, first team in the NBA to 50 wins. That was one thing we left out. They're 50-10 now, folks.
That's right. And already surpassing their win total from a season ago. So a lot of milestones being met. I also was going to bring this up real quick because we were talking about DeAndre Hunter. I went back and checked. He has been a plus. He's been a plus player defense, like in terms of plus minus, in every game he's played this season, except for one where he was 0. So he's never been a minus player in any game he's played so far this year. Just a testament to how impactful he's been out on the floor. Yes.
And one more thing on DeAndre Hunter. He has not typically been the best rebounder over his career. He had 7 tonight, really made some big plays on the defensive glass and a couple of offensive boards too. So keep an eye on that too, because if he's got Mobley and Allen next to him or whatever, maybe that frees him up a little bit more to go crash the glass better.
Gotta love it. Big night for DeAndre Hunter. Big night for Ty Jerome. Big night for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who get their 50th win of the season, 133-129, in an overtime thriller. I don't know that we expected it to be an overtime thriller, but it was, and we all enjoyed it very, very much. Spence, good stuff as always. I'm excited to be back with you on Wednesday from the arena. But in the meantime, be sure to keep on following along. Head on over to si.com/NBA/Cavaliers, where you can read any written content about today's game or about the Cavs in general. And as Spence alluded to during the show, you want to subscribe to the Cleveland Cavaliers and SI YouTube channel because there's so much good content going up over there all the time, including post-game comments. Spence alluded to it. Ty Jerome didn't mince words when it came to the officiating today. If you want to hear what he had to say, you can find that. You can find Kenny Atkinson. You can find DeAndre Hunter. All sorts of good stuff on top of more videos like this. And, of course, our podcast, Courtside with the Cavs on SI. For Spencer Davies, I'm Spencer German. Thanks for stopping by, and keep on following along with all things Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cleveland Cavaliers on SI.